Thanks for joining me today for episode 6. I've got a few videos lined up for us to watch together and talk about, so let's go ahead and get started.
On the day of the eclipse, our most eastern tsunami buoy was turned off. But the day after the eclipse, there was this mass water movement that came from Antarctica that was the size of Texas. Ventu Sky said oh, it's like a glitch. But the same anomaly happened on February 22nd, March 27th, and then April 9th. It looks like it kind of starts at this one island above Antarctica, Bouvet Island. But we talked about one time the Russian torpedo called the Poseidon. It's a nuclear weapon. Supposedly, it can create a 1,000-foot tsunami filled with radioactive material. But supposedly, this past week of the eclipse, they tested it and it worked. And I'm like, well, where are the Russian labs in Antarctica? And it's directly south of Bouvet.
So they shot it at Bouvet.
Or they went to Bouvet to shoot it out. They're saying that this Poseidon tsunami could literally just cover the entire of the UK.
The UK is going to be the next Atlantis.
And then we'll just all choose to forget about
They'll
it.
be like,
it didn't actually
folklore
happen.
about it. Did you know that their cookies were called biscuits?
Okay. You guys hear about those whales that were beached and they were frantically swimming and they were trying to go up onto the beach, and all the people that were witnessing it said that the whales were screaming.
What were they scared of?
I don't know, but the lady, she was shook and she's like, I have not been able to sleep. Yeah.
That sounds terrifying. Megalodon?
Maybe?
Aliens?
Who knows?
Or is
That's
it
weird?
that pulse thing
True.
coming through the ocean? These whales were acting terrified.
Where was this at?
Ocean.
I put both of these back to back since they were fairly short, and they cover the same topic of the anomaly. I find the anomaly interesting because it came back more than once. It was either the same glitch twice, or perhaps that's just a cover for something else. The fun answer, of course, is to say that it's Cthulhu, or Leviathan, or some giant monster from depths unknown, right? If I were to guess, I would say it was some kind of government test, maybe an energy weapon, a frequency weapon, something like HARP. I know that there's been a lot of talk of satellite weaponry. It's possible they could have been testing something like that. It's also possible it could have been some kind of large explosion. But given that it was the size of Texas, that's a mighty explosion. There's a lot of conspiracy chatter that the government has the ability to generate tsunamis and earthquakes, and I believe it. I do believe they have this ability. I think that they manipulate the ionosphere through HARP using old tech that was recovered from Tesla. That's just my speculation. If we're also observing aquatic life like whales and dolphins coming ashore screaming, generally that's because of some kind of sonar or high frequency testing going on in the water, underwater explosions, things like that that can mess with the animal's navigation or cause them to panic and try to flee. They might also try to flee from some new super predator that entered the water. Perhaps some giant monster of some kind was released in Antarctica. Stuff of science fiction, but sometimes I do wonder, though, how much science fiction that we see on TV or that we read in books is over-dramatized stories from the real world. My example would be the Stargate TV show. I've often thought that the Stargate was the government's way to tell us the truth, but in a lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek fashion. We'll talk about Stargate in a different video. I think for this one, most likely it is a glitch, but anytime the government says A, the answer is usually B, which leads me to believe this is probably some kind of government test of some weapon that I hope they never unleash. What do you think? Let me know.
Bruh.
Look, there's something flying through the air. What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?
Yo, what the fuck?
Aliens! Aliens!
Yo.
I'd say that was pretty clearly a Dementor, right? In all seriousness, I don't know what that was, but I've seen a lot of talk about shadows after the eclipse that took place. I haven't seen any myself, but there have been a few videos pop up of people saying that they're spotting shadows in the skies. This is a little different from folks saying they're spotting UFOs, as generally when they see a UFO, they call it a UFO. People are specifically saying they're seeing shadows, almost as if they don't necessarily have a defined shape that they're able to make out. The reason I included this video is because it looks the same as the others that I've seen. Any recordings that I've been able to find of people claiming to see a shadow in the sky, it appears to be the same being or craft or whatever it is. I'm still not sold on the shadows after the eclipse. I think more than likely this is edited footage or they just misidentified something. But I am still open to the possibility. I certainly do believe that there are, aliens and other entities out there. In this case, I'm undecided. But what do you think?
Remember when the ship crashed into the Baltimore Bridge? Why on earth is a crew still on it? 21 people for the last 2 months, and their phones are confiscated. Make this make sense. The day after the bridge collapsed, suspiciously, Biden came out and said, no investigation necessary. The U.S. government will pay for the bridge. Shortly thereafter, the insurance company came out and said, we'll pay out too. In what world does the U.S. government and insurance company pay out immediately without an investigation? Nothing to see here. Don't go digging around. Maui is still dealing with the debris removal and fighting with insurance companies 10 months later. But the bridge? No problem. Let's just pay it out. And then, now we find out that the 21 members of the crew are stuck on the ship, not allowed to leave, trapped, and their phones have been confiscated. Why are they prisoners? The news says they can't leave the ship because of visa restrictions. What? We let ungodly amount of people through the border without visas, but now it's a problem? The conspiracy theorists said cyber attack. Government quickly said accident. What's really going on here?
I had to double check on that this morning, and it turns out that crew is still indeed on that ship. I find that to be suspicious. The amount of people that we let into our country every single day, but these folks are detained, it makes me lean even more in favor of that bridge crash being a cyber attack or an intentional incident. If you weren't aware, there were also a few other barges that have crashed into bridges in the last couple of weeks, though they haven't been nearly to the scale or as damaging. I understand this is something that does happen from time to time, but there's something about the Baltimore Bridge incident that has, to me, the telltales of a false flag. Not necessarily that the government perpetrated it, but perhaps that they were aware of it and let it happen. I do think that this is just another in a long series of intentional attacks on the U.S. We've seen a lot of accidents and spills. The East Palestine train derailment, which is very near to me, near to home. There's several other large hazmat incidents that have taken place all across the country in the last few weeks, the last few months. Since 2021, there have been hundreds upon hundreds of different food processing facilities that have been sabotaged or destroyed in some way or another. We also see a great deal of livestock having to be killed due to disease, things like bird flu. All of that happening at the same time, all of that happening really over the last 3 to 4 years, does give me great concern that we are under attack. It just hasn't been openly declared yet. I think we need strong leadership now more than ever, and I'm afraid we're not seeing it out of Washington.
If you look at Google Sky and look down on Antarctica, you'll find bases from every major country in the world there. And you'll also find the Rockefeller Foundation base as well. There's an opening next to these research facilities. And this is why I believe they made this treaty, this sharing of information treaty or whatever. You can see it on the Google Sky thing. And when you look at it, like, what's in there? Now, why are they over here? And why are they so close to this gigantic opening? What's in there? I think the answer is whatever Admiral Byrd came across or whatever they're coming across, I think it's linked. I think there's a remnant of an ancient civilization in there that possibly is still there, and they're in communication with them. We know that Antarctica was not a frozen tundra. That landmass was on a plate that slipped and there was something called a pole shift of the crust of the Earth, which shifted it from a more habitable climate into the position it is now. They're finding remnants of an ancient civilization. You can actually go down there.
Antarctica has got to be one of the most interesting places on Earth. It's the one place where all of the countries seem to get along. I certainly do think it's possible that there is an advanced civilization or even just a lost civilization buried under all of the ice there. I can only imagine what that place must have looked like when it was lush and overgrown. There's a lot of talk about different holes in Antarctica that potentially lead to an inner Earth or a hollow Earth, and it makes me wonder if things like that are precisely why governments agree to cooperate when they're in Antarctica. Admiral Byrd is certainly an interesting character. He took an entire fleet to Antarctica, supposedly to scout and hunt Nazi remnants, and he comes back with stories of battles against UFOs and all kinds of creatures. He comes back with stories of a tunnel that led to a massive inner Earth. I think stories like these definitely lend credibility to that theory. I think the cooperation in Antarctica also lends credibility to that theory. I've heard some wild stories from Antarctica. Things like the Russians encountering a massive super snake. Things like scientists discovering a giant, ancient, frozen megalodon. I think humanity is a race with amnesia. We have forgotten where we came from. We have stories that are handed down, but just like in a game of telephone, the stories change over the years as each person hands it down to the next. And by the time we reached written history, I think by then most of the truth has already been obscured or lost. I do wonder if maybe that truth is somewhere buried in Antarctica, and I would certainly like to learn more about it.
Common sense is at an all-time low, and denial is a motherfucker. That's why I'm going to present you with the facts and expect you to do the heavy lifting with your critical thinking. First and foremost, the Mississippi River is the true Nile. In Isaiah 11:15, it says, "And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod." That's what it says. The Nile does not do this. But you know what does? The Mississippi. Second point. The Mississippi still runs through the ancient cities that it ran through in the beginning of time. Thebes, Cairo, and Memphis. You have been made to believe that we named our cities after modern-day Egypt, when in fact that is not true. Modern-day Egypt named its cities after our cities in ancient America, which is also ancient Egypt. And before this video gets too long, I'm just gonna add in a final point. Did you know that the Americas have more pyramids than the entire planet combined? Yeah. We'll get into the Grand Canyon on the next video.
Wow. So this is a newer rabbit hole for me, and one that I am definitely going to be digging deeper into. I don't discredit it immediately. I certainly don't believe the history that we're given in our books, and given the amount of misinformation that I think is coming out of Egypt and places where our oldest or most grand monuments are, it does make me call into question pretty much everything that I've ever been told about history. I understand that there is evidence of ancient Egyptians on United States soil, particularly in the west around Arizona and the Grand Canyon. I've seen on the History Channel and other documentaries that various artifacts have been uncovered, including tombs. But I've also heard speculation that the Egyptians or an Egyptian-like race may have helped inspire some of the original Indian burial mounds. And on that topic, I've also run into speculation that some of those burial mounds might actually be pyramids that have been grown over. It was really mind-blowing to learn that the United States has so many pyramids. And when you look at what she's saying about the Mississippi River, and add to it the number of pyramids, and add to that the evidence of ancient Egyptians on our soil, it does make me wonder if America and Egypt were more closely related long ago. I wonder if perhaps the original pyramid builders once lived here. Perhaps they left Egypt and came here. Perhaps they left here and went to Egypt. But this is a very interesting topic that I will certainly be exploring in future videos. Let me know what you guys think though. Is it possible that America is connected to ancient Egypt? Perhaps even the original pyramid builders? Let me know in the comments. That'll bring us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please remember to like and subscribe, and leave me a comment if there's a specific topic you'd like to cover or a video that you'd like to explore together. I'm going to leave you today with the words of the late John McAfee, may he rest in peace. This clip comes from the 2008 Libertarian Party presidential debate. I'll see you next time.
Mr. McAfee.
Libertarianism is grounded in the concept of liberty. But what is liberty? Liberty means that our bodies and our minds belong to ourselves. Liberty is lost when governments decide what is right or wrong regarding what we may do with ourselves. Every law that is tried to restrict or limit personal freedoms and personal liberty has failed. Governments and countries have criminalized prostitution or homosexuality, legislated what ideas we may teach our children, have criminalized the consumption of alcohol or other drugs. And what is the result? Our war on drugs has not diminished the consumption of illegal drugs. It has merely filled our prisons with non-violent citizens and created the most powerful and brutal drug cartel in the world. Prohibition did not reduce the consumption of alcohol. It created suffering through punishment and gave rise to organized crime. And ideas, like evolution, may be offensive to some, but ideas have a life of their own and cannot be extinguished. Liberty, which is personal freedom, cannot be restricted through laws. It can only be unjustly punished as it is expressed, giving rise to suffering throughout society. We're all libertarians on this stage, and you are libertarians here. I am hoping that this debate tonight will make clear the value of liberty in all things. The fact that liberty, its very existence, depends on privacy, and that it is the foundation of a sane and prosperous society.